Hey, Cookies here. This is the Season 1 Dragonflight Mythic Plus guide for Holy Paladin, and just to preface this video, YouTube videos do have the tendency, especially when made early on before the seasons even started to get going, they do have the tendency to be outdated and have outdated information very quickly. So make sure you use resources like Subcreation. I'll have a link to it down in the description below. It's a wonderful website that will help you stay up to date on everything and make sure that the video doesn't mislead you or tell you things that were good at the start of the season but then are now not, maybe towards the later half of the season and whatnot. So just take that into account, and with that, we will go ahead and jump into our talents. Now, the way I'm going to explain the talents is just the capstones and important choice talents that you need to make. And then other than that, you can really go through the tree and pick things that you like, or, things that suit your playstyle. So the important things for the spec specific talent tree, so the holy side of the tree, is going to be Divine Toll, Blessing of Summer, Beacon of Faith, and lastly, Awakening. The rest of the tree, you can literally move around things. There are certain talents that are obviously better than others, but for the most part, those are the key talents that you want to go after. And other than that, you just need to make a path to get to those. And then for the class specific tree, you're going to want Zealot's Paragon, Seraphim, and Divine Purpose. And that's it. So that's it for the talents. That's how I'll go over them. If you have specific questions, come by the Discord. That's where I'll be answering that kind of stuff. But really, the synergy between our talents comes from Divine Toll with Beacon of Faith. It provides a lot of group healing where we normally would lack it. And then also Awakening gives us a lot more power in the spots where we're weakest, which is when our wings is on cooldown. So getting those wings procs helps keeps us going in between the downtime. And then also same thing with Seraphim on the other side of the tree. That's another talent that's going to help keep us going because it gives a lot of healing utility in that it gives a bunch of stats, and this early in the expansion especially, it's going to be super useful. And then things like Zealot's Paragon, that's going to keep our wings going when we do press it, so that in tough boss fights or just tough pulls in general, when we do press those wings, they are super impactful. And that's why we also take a talent like Avenging Wrath Might on the other side of the tree, which also buffs our wings and just makes sure that those wings are pretty much carrying us through every time. But then we need a few things that help us get through those moments where we don't have wings available, because wings is a 2-minute cooldown. So we have about 1 minute and 30 seconds where we just won't have wings. That's why we take things like Awakening, Divine Toll, Beacon of Faith, because they help us get through that time span. So that is the talents. Moving on to stats and trinkets. So for stats, basically just go for item level, then get haste, and then get versatility. That's going to be your core stats, especially this early in the expansion. Haste is super, super, super important for pretty much everybody early on in the expansion because we all don't have enough of it. But otherwise, you should generally just equip item level. And then for trinkets, I'm gonna have a video that talks about all the specific trinkets, but again, come check Subcreation once the season actually starts and people start using items from the new expansion. And you can just find your class, scroll down here, and then there's a section called Trinkets, and it'll show you what all the top players right now running keys are using for trinkets. So just use Subcreation to tell you what trinkets you should be using. These are obviously Shadowlands trinkets, so you can ignore this for now. But for Dragonflight, come check Subcreation. That's the best way of doing it. But I will have a video talking about all the trinkets, so you can also check that out if you want some information and Subcreation hasn't been updated yet or Mythic Plus isn't out yet and stuff like that. So, all right, and then we have our healing rotation. So I'm going to break this down just like the beginner's guide, but we're going to add a few more things to it. But for the most part, in Mythic Plus, it's just upkeep spells. That's our top priority, is just keeping up certain spells, which is going to be Judgment, Consecration, and Bestow Faith. So I'm going to run down here to where there's some target dummies. So again, our upkeep spells are Judgment, so we want to be pressing Judgment on cooldown. Then we're going to be wanting to press Consecrate. Then we're going to be wanting to press Bestow Faith if we have it talented. And right now, the current build doesn't have people playing Bestow Faith. A lot of people are running Unending Light just for more healing, because there is a bigger healing requirement in Dragonflight. But if you do have Bestow Faith, you can just put it with the upkeep spells. So otherwise, it's just Judgment, Consecration, and then we move on to generating Holy Power, which is going to be done through Crusader Strike and Holy Shock. So we generate Holy Power, and then we need to spend this Holy Power. You can spend it anytime you have above 3 Holy Power, you can start spending it. You don't need to build up to 5 unless you're running a specific talent for that. But otherwise, it's just pressing Judgment, pressing Consecrate, generate Holy Power, and then we're spending it. Most of the time, we're going to spend on Word of Glory. That's our main heal. But if we have, as I just mentioned, Unending Light talented, then we would want to use some of our Holy Power on Light of Dawn. So then it should be a mix of generate, like upkeep spells, generate Holy Power, spend on Light of Dawn, generate Holy Power, spend on Word of Glory, generate Holy Power, spend on Light of Dawn, and you kind of bounce back and forth between the two spells. But if you do not have that talented, if you don't have anything that buffs Light of Dawn, you are just pretty much going to spend your Holy Power on Word of Glory like 95% of the time. So just keep that in mind. And then next up, we have our damage rotation, which does not change whatsoever when we are in Mythic Plus, because our damage rotation is also our healing rotation. They're just combined. The only thing that matters that I will mention is if you have Awakening talented, which you probably should in Mythic Plus in most cases. I don't see this talent being bad by any means. So if you have Awakening talented, you want to spend your Holy Power on healing spells, even if the group is full HP and doesn't need healing. The other alternative is using your Holy Power on Shield of the Righteous, but because we have Awakening talented, getting Wings procs from pressing Word of Glory and Light of Dawn is going to be more impactful and better for our damage done than spending our Holy Power on Shield of the Righteous. So if you have Awakening talented, spend Holy Power on healing spells always, even if the group's full HP, because those Wings procs and with Consecrate down and stuff like that, it's going to do way more damage than if you're pressing Shield of the Righteous with your Holy Power. All right, and then we're going to talk about a few important spell usage things or combinations of abilities, stuff like that. Just generally like frequently asked questions, essentially. So who do you use your beacons on? Generally, you're going to use your beacon on the tank and then a ranged DPS. There's kind of like a priority system that I found for myself. You just want to target the squishiest ranged DPS. So if you have like 2 range, I would say like hunters are probably the most important, and then something like probably like mages, and then you kind of go from there. So hunter, mage, try to default to those 2 if you have those in your group. Otherwise, just pick a ranged DPS and throw your other beacon on the tank. So tank and ranged DPS. That's the general rule of it. And then, okay, so what about Infusion of Light procs? We get those every time our Holy Shot crits. I'll try to get it to crit while I'm standing here, but otherwise, Infusion of Light, you have 3 options with Infusion of Light. You can ignore it. You can Flash of Light if you need to do single target healing and you don't have Holy Power to press a Word of Glory on somebody. Or you can Holy Light on somebody with a beacon in order to just generate Holy Power, because that will generate you usually 1 to 3 Holy Power. It just depends on like talents and stuff like that. So here's Infusion of Light. If we get this, we can ignore it. That's the first option, which if you're just trying to like do as much damage as possible, you're mostly going to ignore this. But if you need to actually do healing and you don't have the Holy Power for it, you spend it on Flash of Light. And then if you don't need healing and you also don't really care about doing damage at the moment, or something's preventing you from being able to stand in melee, or things are on cooldown or whatever it may be, then you can use Holy Light. So ignore it, Flash of Light, Holy Light. Those are your 3 options. All right, and then one of the most important combinations of abilities that you're going to be using is your Wings plus Divine Toll. You're going to want to make sure that every time you press Divine Toll, every time you press Wings, Divine Toll is also available. That's the best way to put it, because Divine Toll is a shorter cooldown, so we'll be using it sometimes without Wings. But every time you have Wings, you want to try to also have Divine Toll ready so that you can Wings and then Divine Toll during your Wings, because that's going to give us a huge amount of healing. This is specifically if you're trying to do healing. If you're trying to do damage, it's nice too, but it's most important for like if the group's going to take a bunch of damage, Wings and then Divine Toll. Never press Divine Toll and then Wings right after, because then that's a huge waste. It does way more healing if you have Wings active. Same things with Wings procs. You can try to kind of like wait until you get a Wings proc and then press Divine Toll, but don't rely on it too much. You don't want to keep Divine Toll just sitting there not on cooldown. All right, and then Light's Hammer. So we'll usually have Light's Hammer talented for Mythic Plus because it's just a good damage talent, and that's pretty much all it's used for. We don't really use it for healing, so don't think of it as a healing spell. Just throw it in there. It does do nice healing for certain bosses where the group's all stacked up, but otherwise just think of it as a damage spell. So just every minute, just throw it in the mob that you're fighting, and it'll just do some extra DPS for you. And then the last tip that I have for Holy Paladin specifically is we have so many buttons in our toolkit. We have so many abilities: Divine Shield, Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice. You have even like Divine Favor sometimes talented. You have Aura Mastery. Just don't hesitate to use these things. Just press them. Just get in the habit of pressing them as much as possible, and it will benefit you so much. The worst thing is when people just don't press them because they want to save all of them as like oh no buttons, like, you know, like when you're in a really bad situation, but don't do that. I promise you'll improve so much faster if you just get used to pressing everything all the time. Just use Blessing of Sacrifice if someone starts taking damage. Just use Blessing of Protection on people randomly to try to like see if it gets rid of bleeds and stuff, but try not to use it on the tank because then he loses aggro. So use it on DPS players. Same thing with Divine Shield. Just use it on yourself whenever you're in a situation where you're like, there's going to be some healing that I need to do. Just Divine Shield yourself. Now you don't have to worry about yourself whatsoever. So just get used to pressing all your buttons and don't hesitate to press them. That's the most important tip I can give. Staying ahead is how you succeed in Mythic Plus and just in general in this game. So try to stay ahead, and you do that by being proactive with your abilities rather than reactive. And I think that pretty much covers everything. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one. Hope you're enjoying Dragonflight. If you have any questions, stop by our community Discord. It's linked in the description, or just leave a comment. See you later.